how do you get better at reading multiple clefs? I'm sure. I mean, that was really impressive.
No, this
That
is very important. I think
how do you get
also
better at that? I mean, that
also
is so cool to watch. Is it hard? Was it hard for you to learn how to do that?
no, I did it from my early age, because Frescobaldi in the Fiori Musicali preface wrote that the difference between a virtuoso organist and an ignorant organist is to manage the reading of score, and the reading of score is a really important interpretation, fundamental thing. It's very important. You have you can express to sing better the voices in a horizontal way, and each voice has its clef, no? And this is a very easy thing to do. That for people today is difficult. For me, it's very difficult to read the modern tenor clef an octave lower. This quite most now
Mm.
is after many years I didn't do anymore. I recorded shoots as conductor only in historical clefs, the Spit edition. I recorded the Art of Fugue in an original score. I recorded musical offering, the six-part ricercare in the original keyboard score in six clefs with changing clefs. This for me normal. I studied the Fiori Musicali. For us in Italy was very important. This in the conservatory of my age, and my organ professor wanted it. My harpsichord professor Sergio Bartolo recorded all Frescobaldi works in score, also Art of Fugue, and they wanted. I I must, I might do it. So and all my students, I taught organ 12 years in Bergamo. I taught 8 years in Genoa, and now since 1 year I'm organ composition professor in Venice. And all my students use the score for Frescobaldi and for the works written in keyboard for staves scores or three staves. And this is very important for interpretation. To read Art of Fugue in two systems is completely. You can reach maybe the same. In principle, all is improvisation, all is by memory, by heart. But the horizontal fluency of the polyphony is the most important thing, to see the climax, the ascending climax, and to follow the bel canto singing rule in playing. So the rules are very simple. The messa di voce, so ascending, crescendo, climax, is the sforzato, and descending, diminuendo. This is the first bel canto rule. And if you see the polyphony, the vocal polyphony at the keyboard, Fiori Musicali, Capricci, Fantasia by Frescobaldi, Luzzaschi. I recorded Luzzaschi for the first time and the only time. The second book of Ricercari, preserved in Padre Martini library, now in the part still in San Francesco in Bologna in the church. And there is this manuscript that came from Rome. Geronimo Kitty sent to him, and this score in four staves of the second book, 1578, and the master, the professor of Frescobaldi, and the biggest keyboard contrapunto genius of the second part of the 16th century, I think, in all Europe completely. These 12 ricercari are the most important Ferrarese tradition things before Frescobaldi, and after the ricercari, maybe by Jacques Brunel, the professor of him, organ professor of Luzzaschi, in the Bordeaux Codex in Paris, and also in Vaticano we have some double versions. But in score, so the score, the keyboard score tradition, the score is an invention for keyboard, because composers used score only to compose, but the normal format was a single part for singers. But the organist who couldn't read all the single parts together without bar lines And this Frescobaldi was a virtuoso. He could read many parts separated together and to play the organ the same. But this was for few persons, of course. And normally, what there were two systems in tabulature. So to put in a two-hand system, left right, the polyphony divided for hands, or to rewrite in a open score the single parts, one above the other. And this was done to play basso seguente. These canzonas are a solistic example of the basso seguente way, when fugue was doubled. Fugue, the keyboard doubled, redoubled the voices in the fugue. And this happened from Josquin times, because Josquin in Ferrara used to sing masses with organ. We have historical sources.
Oh.
And so the organ was the organ in the Western Christian Church, in the Catholic Church, and then in the Lutheran Church. In the Calvinist Church, organ was only permitted for psalms later, and then under influences of Lutheran Germans, North Germans, they started to have big organs in Holland and use them solistically in the Abendmusiken, in the evening concerts in church. But this was another thing. So the Catholic organ became Lutheran and Anglican, but in principle less Calvinist. But why the organ? Because the organ was the instrument to keep the intonation, in order to keep voices, the singers, in tune. And so they doubled the polyphony. The organ that I wrote in my Klavierübung 3 recording, I was young, 2005, I wrote that it was destiny of keyboard music, of organ music, to be not in organ style, in keyboard style, because the beginning of organ music is the vocal style, no? Then with légèreté de la main, du main, leggiadria di mano, the lightness, the virtuoso, the fastness of the hand, you could add ornaments like voices. Also, the voices or make trills, ornamentation. But in principle, the meaning of keyboard was to keep in tune the singers. No?
Oh wait, but you jumped. You jumped ahead. So I wanted to ask you. I think you sold me, but how do you do it? How do you learn to play open scores?
So first things in Italy is still obligatory, I think. Now
you just do it. Is it? Is that what you just do
no,
it? Then...
when you are a child, the old system of Italian conservatory is 10 years for keyboard, composition, violin. The first 3 years we have solfeggio. We had solfeggio lessons, and this is rhythmic and so. But we have to read the 7 clefs. We do 7 clefs, but the clefs are much more, and we will see it in Padre Martini and also in Ristori. The clefs are possible to put a G clefs in all 5 lines, F clefs in all 5 lines, the C clefs in all 5 lines. And Padre Martini in the Departamento, we will listen, does it, but did it. But
we got to go to. Yeah, we have
to learn it. We have to learn it obligatory, because one could be a viola player, so alto player. One could be a trumpet player with transpositions. So we have to study. What is different from me, that I have to read the clefs together, but this is normal thing for a keyboard player, I think. So organists read also 3 lines for the pedal now. So I don't think it's much more difficult to have a range, a compass out of the 5 lines. So in the normal historical clefs, the meaning is to be in the center of the system, no? Not much out of the system. This is impossible to sing. If you go out of the 5 lines of the pentagram, you have not possibility to sing it, because it is out of the compass of a human voice. And so if you stay in Frescobaldi, in this music, and the essential impartimento didactica in composition is to use it in our conservatories in the seventh year exam of composition. You had to compose a fugue in 4 parts, in 4 staves with historical clefs. Historical. The clefs for me are not historical. Are normal. I compose normally when I compose on this partimento. I was playing in historical clefs. I used my edition, and I put on the edition soprano clefs, and Giorgio Pacchioni can use only historical clefs. Giorgio Pacchioni composed only fugues in historical. It's impossible for him, also for me. Is another system. To use the violin clefs for is like opera Puccini things, and also Puccini in his fugues under Bazzini, the conservatory, use the 4 clefs. So this is completely normal. Now in the European, North European, I think teaching system is not obligatory, but for organists it's obligatory to partitur spiel, to read the score. Then if you do normally or not normally, but in principle you have to do. And I did always during the masses when I played the organ as a liturgical organist for many years. I always put in front of myself, and then I read normally. I prefer to read historical sources than modern editions, because in modern edition very often, yes, there is the critical edition with many comparing of sources, but very often there are more mistakes repeated, and I prefer to go to the original mistake than to the mistake. And then the graphical aspect is very important for interpretation. It's something when you play Frescobaldi toccatas from the intavolatura, always done, always taught, always. Like Sergio Marto, like Francesco Cera, there are persons who did it, who do it. And you have another understanding of the interpretation. I think it's something very subtle, very very esoteric, maybe. But it's also I'm against.
I can believe it. No, that sounds good.
I prefer facsimile editions.